We're here today at Weaste Cemertery in Salford. Opened in 1857. It's the very first municipal cemetery to open in Salford. It stretches for nearly 40 acres and is a final resting place of some 330,000 people. An incredible amount. We're here today to make a series of short films about the people who are buried here. We have the rich industrialists, mill owners, etc. with their fancy memorials, but to be honest, I'm more interested in the I won't say common people, the ordinary people who mean something to me, interesting people. We've got footballers, 2 Manchester United players are interred here. We've got poisoners, murderers, musicians, world champion wrestlers. We've got everything you can think of is buried here in Weaste. And does anybody remember a little story about Albert Finney being locked in here with Liza Minnelli one night? A scurrilous story perhaps? Well, if you find out, let me know. But in the meantime, we're going to take a little walk around the cemetery and show you some of my favourite graves.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
This is the grave of Samuel Hill Darby, and it's one of the most famous or infamous graves in Weaste Cemetery, depending on your point of view. Samuel made headlines in the newspapers in a story called the Salford Tragedy. Tragedy isn't a strong enough word for it. In March 1888, he poisoned his wife and 6 children, aged between 3 and 13 years of age. Samuel was aged 36 and he was a chemist's assistant, enabling him to get access to drugs, I would assume. It's a rather tragic story, as in, I'll regale you with it now. He invented a railway coupling to stop trains buffering with the couplings, a safety device basically, only to arrive at the patents office to be told that the day before someone had patented this device. Earth shattering for him. And secondly, he had an uncle in Ireland who had left him money in a will, bequeathed it to him. As I say, he desperately needed the money to get himself out of this plight with a wife and 6 children. He went to Ireland to claim his money from the will, only to find that his 2 brothers had beaten him to it and he got cheated out of the inheritance. Now, the man was at his wit's end, obviously. He snatched the will from the office and raced back to England with it. I don't know what he was going to prove. It was too late by then, the money had gone. He returned home to his wife, and this is a shocking, terrible part. Between them, they arranged a suicide pact. He prepared a mix of cyanide and treacle and administered it first to the youngest children. They thought it was a bedtime drink, presumably. He worked his way up till the young lad who was 13. All the children died fairly quickly. He then, with his wife, prepared to take their final draft. She took hers. Now the strange twist is here, Samuel then went out onto the streets to people's houses he knew and got them to sign a will that he'd made, basically to say that he was sane or he was acting sane. He went home and wrote several letters for people, including 2 for his brothers, 1 for his sister, 1 for an uncle. He then went upstairs. Well, actually, he drank the cyanide in the front room and died on the sofa. Several days elapsed. His father was concerned about him. He'd not seen him. He called at the house, couldn't gain access. Contacted the police. They called and found all the bodies. Now, when the notes were opened, it was obviously he was unbalanced. To his brothers, he left them £1 each in the will. This is like a token gesture of hatred, I suppose. He wrote to his sister and his aunt, thanking them for their kindness he'd shown him throughout his life. But he also wrote about the children who were dead obviously. He said they were richer than millionaires now. strange, isn't it? The day of his funeral, it's in the papers, it says that there was thousands lined the route down Cemetery Road to the graveside. There was fighting, pushing. People were concerned that he should not be buried in the same grave as his wife and children. Moral outrage. He was buried here with the children, and this is the family's final resting place. But I came across a little piece. There was an autopsy on Samuel, and his brain was removed. The doctor declared that by looking at the brain they could tell if he was sane, and they said he was sane, and it was murder. A sane man killing your 6 children and a wife? I don't think so, but have pity on the poor man and his children more so. And if you're passing, this is the man's grave. Stop and have a look at it. Cheers.
The people's flag is deepest red, it's shrouded oft are marked to death, and their limbs grew stiff and cold, their hearts blood dyed its every fold. Embrace the sky, this hand that died, wishing it will live or die, though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here.
This is the grave of William Horrocks, better known as Old Bill. That was known to his comrades and friends. He was a strong, staunch socialist and a believer in human rights. Lovely guy. The more I read about him, the more I like him. Bill was a familiar figure around Salford, protesting for people's rights. He actually nailed his, he put his money where his mouth was, Bill. He got arrested in Albert Square, Manchester, speaking at an anarchist rally. He protested against the Boer War, quite a brave thing to do. He stood in local by-elections, never successful obviously. He was, as I say, a wonderful man, but his death was a bit untimely. On the 23rd of April 1918, Bill was found dead in the Bridgewater Canal at Patricroft. The story is that he was going to visit his godson. People say that he tripped up over a rope, fell in the canal and drowned. Others hint at darker things. I've heard rumours that Bill was murdered for being a political firebrand, shall we say. We'll never know the truth, obviously, but he had a wonderful send-off, and that's no consolation for him, but he was a good age, Bill. The Hindman Hall on Liverpool Street, long demolished. In fact, the unemployed march to Bexley Square, the Battle of Bexley Square in 1931, that set out from there. Bill's funeral cortege set out from Liverpool Street to this spot, obviously. And I was amazed to read that the funeral cortege was led by a chap waving a red flag and a band playing the red flag and socialist anthems. And 1,000 people turned up for his funeral. It's an amazing amount of people, and this chap should be more remembered in Salford's social history, political history, and Paul Dennett or John Catter all know about this man and come and see him. Not finished there though. He died without a will, no money, and the Independent Labour Workers' Party, they had a whip round and £70 was raised. This paid for his headstone, and with the money that was left over, it paid for a student's fees for 1 year to attend a Labour supporting college, which I think is quite admirable even. Also buried in this grave is a chap called Joe Halsworth. He too was a strong socialist. Fought in the First World War. I don't know too much about him, to be honest. Now, I do know that, again, the Socialist Party paid for Joe's funeral, and he too is interred in this grave. Two comrades together, you could say, I suppose. But look at the wordings on the grave. The world is my country is one of them. There's a map of the world, and when the grave was finished, people visited, the Soviet Union was coloured in red. It's gone now, obviously, the weather's wore it away, etc., but I might get a felt tip and colour the Soviet Union in red again. So if you're passing, come and say hello to Bill. Well worth it. passed this grave several times and it never fails to amuse me. It shouldn't do, I know that, with it being a gravestone. Euphema. Don't back me on camera. Oh. I've passed this grave many a time and it's always brought a smile to her lips. I know you shouldn't laugh at a headstone, but it's the names that are really unusual, to say the least. The first one, Euphema. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the surname's Tulip. Quite a nice name to it. Below it though, Lancelot C. Tulip. You got to be tough to have a name like that. But even tougher when you find out the C actually stands for chicken. I kid you not. Lancelot Chicken Tulip. That's some name in it, some weight to carry around with you, but here he is, and his family. Yeah. Look and marvel.